Welcome to the Strategy with Jason podcast. Tune in for everything you need to know to stay in the know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? Is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me in another episode of Strategy with Jason. Today, I have a very famous guest. I'm so excited to talk to this guest. Like, he's shaking his head. Yes, he knows he's famous. He's internet famous. Actually, he is meta famous. I have the one, the only, the oh so famous Mr. Bob Lanham with me. Bob, what's up?
I think you forgot the infamous part, not the famous part. So let's go with infamous, maybe. Man, it's great to be here. I'm hoping that you're gonna change my background in the footage into a car driving around Vegas versus this.
100%. I'm actually gonna make it all
hopefully
orange.
We can do it in person sometime.
I'm looking forward to it. We're gonna do it one of these days. We got real close a few times, but we're gonna do it.
I'll be able to travel sooner or later.
Hey, Bob, for everyone out there that's watching and listening right now and maybe kind of don't know who you are and your background and how you got started in the automotive industry, for like the three people out there, let's go ahead and kick it off with a little origin story. So, Bob, how did you get started in this crazy world we call the automotive industry?
Yeah, I love this world. So I had the privilege to start in this business in the mid 90s when I graduated from college. And my first job was selling cars on the showroom floor. And because I was the youngest seller at the time, I quickly became the internet manager, whatever the internet was at the time for automotive retail. Moved to F&I manager and did some GM school training, didn't complete it, but was on my way of potentially maybe running a store at some point. But then I ventured out into the digital space as I saw that to grow, and had the opportunity to work for what was CarPoint at the time, which turned into MSN Autos. Then I went to Yahoo Autos, and then the bigger portfolio of the Yahoo properties. I went to Hulu. I was privileged to be a part of Hulu from the beginning, when we were doing zero in revenue to what we were doing 5 years later.
That's cool.
And here I am at Facebook. Been here 7 years.
7 years. Facebook, aka the Meta.
That's right. You know what?
I caught you. Facebook, I caught you, didn't I? Look at that.
Thank you.
This is gonna be the one little tidbit that I get thrown out there. I'm like, the one time I got Bob, because I bet you get everybody on that one, don't you? You're like, it's not Facebook anymore.
And I tend to say, Bob Lanham with Meta, formerly known as Facebook, but man, I was in the zone, and
you were totally in the zone.
I just went.
Hey, Bob, man, we got some really cool topics we're going to jam about today, and this first one, I think is a very timely one right now. Especially with what's going on in the industry. Standardizing measurement, I think, is huge, right? Measurement standardization. It's like how do we get to that place? Both of us have seen such wildly different approaches to the way that we're measuring our marketing efforts and so on. And we have to come to a place. I believe that we have to come to a place. I know you got thoughts on this too, where we can actually standardize this. So, when you hear measurement standardization, what's your first thoughts?
Yeah, let me tell you the background of where my passion came in measurement standardization or somehow standardizing measurement. I've had so many conversations with agencies and dealers or whoever, and I'll be in a room full of dealers, and I'll have one dealer, hey, your platform is the worst platform that I've ever advertised on. It never works. Of course. But then I'll have a dealer like sitting next to him or down the aisle say, you're crazy. It is my number one performing platform. And every time I hear that, I'm like, there should not be a huge variance like that.
No.
That's just not how media works. So why is that? And usually when you dig into it, it's what strategies they're running, how it's being measured, how the back end or the tagging is being measured. They're two completely different setups. So you're not comparing apples to apples. You're comparing apples to oranges. And man, I see this every single day. Every single day I still see, well, I run a specific ad unit with Facebook and I'll go into the campaign. I'm like, well, you're not actually running that, right? You're running something completely different. And, I looked at some of the case studies that have come out in the past, some of the more recent ones. And I'm just like, well, how do we know if everything's set up apples to apples to be able to compare it? So, I've had a number of conversations with people in the industry, and we all agree there has to be some form of standardization in terms of measurement and setup to measure, because we have this at the tier 1 level. At the there's the IAB, the ANA, like there's governing bodies
exactly
that require standardization. I'll tell this one story. I was at MSN at the time, Microsoft. Some of you are probably saying, what the heck is MSN? What is he? Who is he? It was one of the 3 portals that existed at the time. And the IAB came out, which is the governing body, came out and said, hey, right now it's a free-for-all in ad unit sizes. Like we got to standardize this. And they came out with 4 ad unit sizes that every website had to adhere to. And they had to rebuild their websites to accommodate, these 4 sizes on their pages. So we need to have some form of standardization.
Well, I think the first thing is for people out there watching and listening, let's go a little bit deeper into what we're looking to be standardized, right? Because, to your point, you brought up a great point that, data is kind of this ebb and flow of information. And, unfortunately, Bob, as an agency, I can kind of paint the picture of the data however I kind of want to paint the picture. I mean, let's face it, it is what it is, right? I mean, because there are so many data points out there, and because it is so accessible and customizable, I can have, hey, look over here, don't look over there, just look over here, and we're seeing that. So, for the people out there watching and listening, what elements or which measurements would you like to see get standardized within our marketing efforts?
Yeah, and before I get to that, I mean, I loved what you just said, because that still happens today, right? Like we paint the picture however we want to paint it, and we create benchmarks to be whatever they want to be. Like, who's to say that's the real benchmark? So first and foremost, I think I would say in the digital space, we have to set up our tag correctly, our event management correctly, right? The schema of all of that, right? So that we can truly measure VDP views and cost of VDP views and lead gen and all of the digital metrics equally by having the same setup. Now, the pages don't have to have the same setup or structure, but the measurement of events, right, have to have the same structure, because like you said, things can be structured in a way to paint the picture however we want it. So first, standardization is digitally, and that event setup or that tagging setup, so we truly are measuring apples to apples. Second is just the overall media aspect. And I had a conversation on this earlier today with a general manager, and I just said, hey, if I asked you right now within the next 10 minutes for you to send me a spreadsheet of all of the expenses that you have for your advertising and marketing, could you do it? He's like, no. And I was like, well, why not? Like, it's one of your top expenses. So we have to come down to an understanding that media platforms do not work in a silo. They work holistically. They work together. Yes. So I would love to start standardizing marketing mixes so we can start comparing it across the board. So we can say, hey, this dealer spends heavily over here, not so heavy over here. What is their performance? Well, let's look at dealerships that may do it differently. Is their performance equal, above, or below? What can we learn from it? Because right now it's the Wild West. Oh, yeah. People are doing what they want when they want. And to your point, measuring however they want, which then determines what they buy. Wrong measurement equals maybe possibly wasted spend.
So that's a good point. So as a dealer, I mean, look, we're getting bombarded with a million different things as it is, right? And everything from operations to whatever roof is being burnt down at that given moment. Being in a dealership is somewhat controlled chaos all the time. So it's how do we know, or how are we able to identify? Maybe that's the question. That's what I'm looking for. How are we able to identify, all right, a agency or a marketing individual coming to me with a series of measurements and say, yeah, that is what I want to see?
that's the purpose of standardization, right? Like we have to come to a conclusion. Let me give you an example, a story. I'm a storyteller. It's the best way for me to kind of get a point across. About 4 weeks ago, right before the holiday, I made a post on LinkedIn about measurement, and I used OTT-CTV as an example. And let's be clear, I came from Hulu. I was there back in 2009. So some of us like to think we invented OTT-CTV, or at the very least, we were the first to bring it to the market, right? But the majority of OTT and CTV is non-clickable.
Yes.
So what's the measurement? So if we have an agency that has been selling performance-based marketing platforms and measuring on cost per lead and this, and then all of a sudden this new shiny object comes by, and they're starting to sell that, and they're coming to me like, oh, we got big budgets for it, and what? Okay, well, how are you measuring? Well, that's a brand play. Well, you've never sold brand before. Now all of a sudden that's a brand play because you can't click on it, like you can't post measure it. So that's a perfect example of why we need some sort of standardization, and maybe that would fall in the marketing mix bucket, right?
Yeah, because I dig it. Because you know what, I'm thinking we need a standardization. When I was listening to it, and I remember that post now too, because I think I engaged it, and I remember there was some great back and forth actually in that post. So it
was one of my most viral posts.
Yeah. There was some really good engagement in there, and I remember several of the old school guys in there said something that was kind of similar to me. I was like, look, you got to kick it back to reach and frequency.
And that's, I mean, it's so many like, well, what's the goal of advertising? Well, to reach eyeballs. Right. Yes. Well, what type of eyeballs? Because there's two trains of thought, right? There's I'm going to focus on a highly targetable audience because supposedly that audience is going to buy a car within the next 15 minutes. So I only want to target those people. But then you have people that truly understand, well, that's not how human behavior works. You have to build intent, grow intent, drive intent. Well, how do you do that? Well, you have to reach an audience, right, that may not know about your product or service first, and introduce them to your product or service because they haven't shown a signal that they're in market for your product or service. Right. So at the end,
I was going to say that's a really good point, and I want to highlight that real fast, because when you think of audience, we almost need to standardize our approach to audience as well, right? I was thinking back to that post, and I'm actually pulling it up on one of the other screens right now. I'm reading through it while you're talking, but
as my wife walks by,
is your wife? Hi, hey wife. But a lot of them we're saying reach and frequency, but the performance of that reach and frequency is completely dependent on the audience that we're actually targeting, and that's where you're going with this. So do you see kind of a standardization in almost kind of the reach and frequency, standardization in the way we approach an audience, and maybe a standardization in engagement metrics? Would that make sense to you?
Not necessarily as granular as you just mentioned it, but you talked about well, the performance is based off of the audience that we're reaching, right? Well, what's that performance? Because maybe you're reaching an audience that didn't know about your product or service, or at least it needed to be reinforced that you're the dealership down the street, but they're not ready to buy yet. They're still 2 months away. Well, there's great value in that reinforcement or introduction of your brand 2 or 3 months ahead of time. That's how TV makes so much money, right? TV is bought with the understanding that, okay, I've got scale, and we can debate that, right? We've got reach, but we know not everybody's in market, but we're preparing them so when they are, they're going to remember our brand. Well, we can debate if TV is the best platform for that. I'd say no, but we can debate that. But that's the point. You see what I'm saying? Like, yes. we have agencies that strictly focus on TV buying. But what do you think they're going to sell? Like, what research do you think they're going to bring to the table? Like, there's huge economics behind TV buying and TV production.
Huge, yes.
Right? Unlike maybe other platforms where people can't make as much money. Now, I'm not saying that's what drives decision making, but maybe that's what drives decision making. I don't know. So to answer your question, I think we need to standardize the measurement of the mix, right? And then because it's digital and we can tag it appropriately, we'll see what role TV had, what role radio had, what role a brand-based Facebook buy had, or a reach and frequency buy had on the overall metrics of the mix.
Yeah, we can get that overall one. So are you thinking more of like a standardization around engagement metrics? Because it seems like if there is a standardization, that's about the closest thing I feel like we have across the networks. Do you feel that way or no?
Standardization of how we measure the engagement metrics.
Yes.
Right.
Okay.
How we tag the engagement metrics, so that if I have a Volkswagen dealer in Tennessee and a Volkswagen dealer in New York, if both their sites are tagged properly and they have different media plans or media mixes, we'll be able to see what the true end result is. Unlike today, where their tagging could be completely different, so they're getting two completely different end results that you just can't measure against accurately.
I see what you're saying. Okay, now I get it. It's because the way that we are structuring the goals or the conversion goals or the events or whatever word you want to use to describe that we're not able to effectively measure the engagement it's required to execute on these quote unquote goals. So then it just becomes incredibly disembogulated, right? Like the engagement points are standard, but the way we measure those engagement points are not standard.
That's right. Because listen, you might have a dealer that says, man, I had the highest amount of VDP traffic I've ever had in my entire life, but I sold less cars.
Yes.
Okay, so what was the point of driving so much traffic to your VDPs? How much money did you spend on that? This is the best way I always equate it. I used to say this in front of dealers all the time. Can someone please give me what your average, not by price, average close rate on form leads? 8%? Mm-hmm. Great. How much of your advertising and marketing budget is to generate lead forms? Oh, the majority. So you spend the majority of your advertising budget for 8% of your sales. I've never really looked at it that way. Well, we need to look at it that way. Like, what did you do to create intent, to create awareness for future sales? Because that's how human behavior works.
Do you think the automotive industry struggles with this because, we are so fixated on this magic word we call leads? That we almost want to throw everything else, we throw everything else out the window. And it's just like, well, but they're providing me names and phone numbers and email addresses, so it must be working. Is that what's holding us up from evolving our understanding and approach to marketing?
We were chatting before we went live on, man, we are part of one of the biggest transitions this industry has ever seen. It'll be interesting to see who adapts and survives and who doesn't. I don't think the concept of focusing all your efforts on the 30-day transaction is going to be the ones that survive. I think those who focus on short or near-term sales at the same time building your efforts for long-term sales or even mid-term sales, and understand how that advertising, that long-term sale advertising impacts your short-term sales. Those who understand that are going to not only probably win, but they're going to spend the least amount on marketing to survive.
It's totally true. 100%. We are seeing kind of that cream rise to the top. We're seeing who the real operators are. And what I mean by operators, I'm not just talking about owners. I'm talking about in the marketing space as well. I feel like we almost need ping Dan from Vista Dash just to come in real quick so we can have a little jam session with the three of us. Well,
I mean, and what a role he plays in, and he's on the same page of looking to standardize, right? The event or the engagement metrics. And we need to, because he's not trying to see, what I love about Vista Dash, he's not saying you should buy this over that or that over this. He just wants to provide you an agnostic platform that shows you the data, so you as the Mr. and Mrs. Dealer can ask the right questions and make the right decisions on what you see is working. Now, I would like to up level it one level and say, well, we can't just look at digital in a silo.
Yes.
Let's take search, for example, right? We all know, or I hope we all know, search captures the intent that is created outside of search. How many times have you gone to a search engine and just said, what should I search for? Oh, search made me search for, no, something brought, something else. Some other platform introduced you to something that had you want to search for it. So those who it could have been TV. Like, yes. I know it could have been radio. It could have been a radio. Like, you don't know unless you have a mix.
Well, and that's a perfect segue kind of into our next topic too, right? We're going to talk about marketing mix, all right, and what that really looks like. Both of us have been very open and very talkative about, hey, there is no golden ticket. This isn't Willy Wonka, all right? You're not out there unwrapping 100,000 different candy bars so you can find the golden ticket, right? It really is a mix of this, a mix of this. I actually call it the marketing stew. Because some things taste a little better together and some don't. So it's cool. Actually, this is the one thing I really love about being an agency is this portion of it, right? Because like any other chef out there, we all are working with the same ingredients, right? Now how we mix those ingredients together can make a wildly different taste and product. So when you say kind of that marketing mix, for everybody out there that's not familiar with what that is, you kind of want to go into, let's go a little into kind of 101, what it is, and then how we can actually improve it moving forward.
I loved your analogy because I also used the same one in a video that I produced regarding, what is a marketing mix, how to create one and does it work? And I used the example of baking a cake. Your ingredients equal your media platforms that you buy. Right. And the ingredients combined deliver the cake. Right. And like you said, depending on what quality of ingredients you put in defines the quality of the cake. And one might say, well, you need eggs to create a cake. But I could say you don't necessarily need eggs because there are substitutes.
Yeah, we eat a lot of vegan stuff. So I'll tell you right now, we eat a lot of cakes that don't have eggs.
There you go. Now, some may say, well, the replacement of that, I don't like it as much, right? And that could be a media platform that you brought in to replace another media platform that you thought wasn't working. And you realized when you tasted the new cake with the new ingredients, man, it wasn't as good as the old one. But you wouldn't know that unless you had the ingredients mapped out. Right. So let me give you a great example of this. If I was well, I am, but let's say you were a dealer and I'm the media partner coming in and I'm saying, Jason, my name is Bob Lanham. I'm with the best leads company ever. Like, you have to buy me, Jason. My leads are the great. It's going to cost you $8,000 a month.
Yep.
You're going to say, great. Your first question should be, now, is that $8,000 that I'm gonna spend with you? Is that going to bring me incremental sales that I'm obviously going to at least make $8,000 in profit from? Or are you suggesting that I replace one or two offerings that I'm currently buying? Maybe for $8,000, maybe for more. Maybe I'm buying something that's $20,000. I'm replacing it with your $8,000 offering, right? So I'm saving $12,000, which just goes down to the PVR, right? Just goes right down to the margin. And maybe you perform just as well, if not better. So I win as the dealer. But no one ever asked that question. Great, I'll try it. And then they measure that best leads ever company in a silo, not realizing that it cost them $8,000 and actually they didn't sell any more cars than they did the month before.
So it's actually so a net focused loss on the lead. They want to buy leads. They don't actually want to do marketing. You know what I mean?
They don't want to work at it.
They don't want to work at it, right? Like the intent behind marketing is to get the person to a place where they're willing to engage with us. They want to have meaningful conversation with us. I presented them a series of value propositions that said, yes, yeah, I want to engage with you. Now just tell me how to engage with you. Is it a phone call? Is it a messenger chat? Is it a text message? But that as an industry, we have not taken that approach. All right. We've looked at all of our marketing efforts need to do one thing. They need to provide me an ADF or XML email that has first name, last name, address, email address, phone number, blood type, shoe size, and firstborn. And then once we get that information, we're like, oh, thank you so much for that. Here's an autoresponder. I'll get off my soapbox now, but you know where I'm going with this. Like we need to get to real marketing with the intent of real engagement. So, you know, Jason, when you hear that mix, what kind of strategies do you think of, you know?
I am not against leads, right? Like, and you know, yes, maybe we need to define what a lead is. Well, I think we just need to redefine the definition of a lead, but
there you go.
Nonetheless, but what intrigues me is when I talk to that dealer that says, you know, I spend 80% of my advertising and marketing budget on a lead gen strategy that drives 8% of my sales.
It's so crazy.
Like that's what I want to solve, right? Yes. Because your mix is 80% lead gen, and you know who knows what the other 20% is. Probably, you know, search to measure the lead gen, right? But you know, as we start to understand media. How media works, and we compare that to consumer behavior, we have to be introduced to products and services. And it's the meet and greet.
Yes.
Most important aspect of the physical car sale. 100%. We have to be introduced. We have to earn its trust. You know, I wrote an article for Adweek, and I joked that I bought the $42 can opener, right, from Japan off of an Instagram ad because, man, that ad was fantastic.
I bought one of those fire pits.
It wasn't really selling the can opener. Yeah. It was selling the benefits of why you needed this can opener. They didn't even show the price until I got the checkout. I was like, heck yeah, I got to have it. I don't care if it's $42.99. It probably costs 3 cents to make.
But it's the story that you bought into.
Well,
right? I did the exact same thing. What was that one that was on Instagram for a long time? It was that fire pit. You know, kind of that big steel drum fire pit. Yeah, I have two. Yes, I have two of them. I have one for here and then one for the cottage. And same thing. I wasn't looking for it. I really wasn't. No intention.
You showed no signal.
No signals
that you were looking
whatsoever.
for a fire pit. Now some will say, yeah, different purchase, higher, lower. It's the same. Listen,
that's what the mix is. See, people think that, you know, when we think of that funnel or that intent funnel, right, we have to focus on this wee little bit of piece down here. And dealerships don't believe that they can actually bring someone from just product introduction all the way down the funnel to true intent.
You got it. I mean, listen, we know you cannot debate the fact that people are willing to pay a premium for automobiles.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
89%. I got this from Cox. 89% of people who bought a car in the fourth quarter of last year paid MSRP or above.
Mm-hmm.
So we know for a fact people are willing to pay a premium. So as the volume starts to come back, yes, I understand maybe the premium comes less, but are we just going to say, oh, no, let's just quickly go race to the bottom again and lower all of our prices and take the incentive money? Mm-hmm. After we just spent 2 years trying to build a process and grow experience, right? The experience over price.
So if you sell the experience and not the product, that's when things really change. And you know, and I gotta think, okay, for everyone out there that's listening, I'm gonna give you an automotive example of a company I think does this the best of the best of the best in automotive, and that's Porsche. All right, they sell the living crap out of the experience. The product just fulfills the experience. Is there any other examples maybe you would throw out there? And would you agree, by the way, with that with Porsche? I don't know if you do or not.
Well, let's take what you just said. You know, the product fulfills the experience. Mm-hmm. Let's bring that to the media aspect of it, right? We need to think about strategies first and use products to fulfill the strategy. Mm-hmm. So many times, even within Meta, right? Hey, I get an email, I get a message from someone on a new product group. Hey, I'm on this new product group. We're designing this product. And the first thing I have to think of is, why don't you sell products? Right? Mm-hmm. I sell why you should be executing human behavior strategies on our platform. like a brand strategy and how brand drives a lower funnel strategy, or a direct response strategy, which is your engagement strategy. They all work hand in hand. So how is that product going to fulfill one or two of my strategies that we present in the marketplace? I'm just not going to go out and just sell, hey, we have a new lead gen ad.
Exactly.
Like, no, like we're going to sell a product that fulfills the strategy. So I love what you said about that. And I'm not in market for a Porsche or a luxury car buyer, mainly because I have 3 kids and three colleges to pay for and a bunch of other. Hopefully I'll get there one day.
Bob, one day. I will say, Bob, I actually have done one of the Porsche experience days.
In Atlanta?
Dude, is it amazing or what?
Well, I was nauseous after the test track ride, but nonetheless, it was beautiful. The whole campus is gorgeous.
It's the whole experience, man. It gets just like, I mean, like I don't have one, but I will one day, and it's because of that experience that is the reason why I'll do that. Sorry, anyways, I digress. But I think going in from marketing mix, I want to make one little transition for you real quick, and I want to start talking about the role of the ad format. Because I think the mix, I think we've driven home the fact that you need a mix, okay? And a mix with the understanding that people want to connect to a story before they connect to the product. And, think that, you can most definitely bring someone from the top and intro them to the funnel and bring them all the way down. You don't have to target everything down completely here at the bottom. And then, to your point, like you said earlier, marketing does not work in a 30-day cycle. All right, so get that out of your damn mind. All right. But I think we can go even one step farther down the rabbit hole. We can talk about the role of the ad format, because, man, has there never been more formats for us to play with than historically ever. Before, like, you had newspaper, TV, and radio. That was it. That's the only formats you had. Now you have tons. So when I say the role of the ad format, what's the first thought that comes to your mind?
What you just said, marketing should not be at a 30-day cycle, right? Mm-hmm. Why? Well, because the purchase intent is not on a 30-day cycle. That's not how people buy products, right? Yes, they might buy impulse buys for $42.99 that I saw, but they're not going to buy a $75,000 car, right? Within a 1 second impulse buy. So I love what you just said about that. Marketing shouldn't be at a 30-day cycle simply because human behavior and how they buy automobiles is not on a 30-day cycle. And let me tell you a quick story. So we have the marketing mix, right? So we understand everything that we're buying, and it goes back to that post that I made about measurement.
Yes.
Right. We have OTT CTV, which is a TV ad. Cool. Yes. Can't click on it. Okay. We'll figure out the measurement. But let's just dig a little bit deeper in OTT CTV, right? Because every platform maybe might run a little bit differently. So my ad is a TV-esque ad. Yep. Yes. It runs in a commercial break. Yep. Well, how many commercials are in the commercial break? Well, one platform has 6, one platform has 2. Well, which one do you think is going to perform better? Probably the one with 2. Why? Well, less is more, right? They're going to remember that ad because there's less clutter. Mm-hmm. Let's think of display, right? Everyone talks about, well, display works because we can target these hyper-focused audiences. Great. That's awesome. So you can supposedly reach someone that's going to buy a car the next day. Yep. Well, how are you reaching them? Well, it's display. It's an ad unit. Well, how many ads are on that page? Well, 62, right? Well, what sizes? 100 of them. Like we've got to start I'll never forget this. I was at Hulu at the time, and I don't remember who it was, but it was a gentleman that ran a very well-known agency. I raised my hand then. And this is, gosh, we're going 7, 8, like 11 years ago. And I said, quick question for you, because at that time, Hulu had 1 ad per commercial break, which was 90% less ad load than TV. It was one of our core value propositions. Even when we went to 2 ads, we had 75% less ad load at TV. So our, what they call efficacy, right? Our sentiment was much higher than TV ads format and anything else. So that was one of our biggest sales was the ad format. So I asked this gentleman, like, what role do you think the ad format plays? And you would have thought I asked him a question that was like in a different language. And I just remember going like, man, like we can't, like, okay, audience is one thing, but how is the ad going to be delivered?
Yes.
Right. I was at a meeting. I won't tell you the OEM because I don't have the presentation in front of me. So yeah, the CMO of this OEM did a phenomenal presentation, and they were talking about, I won't call it out because it doesn't matter. I'm not here to do it. They were talking about a specific type of advertising.
Mm-hmm.
Could have been social, could have been display, could have been TV. It doesn't matter. And they were talking about the human behavior around this type of ad format.
See, I like that conversation.
And they were saying, did you know that 70% plus of people don't even know there are ads on the page?
Mm-hmm.
Well, so are we advertising, is the bulk of our money going to a platform or ad format where 70% of people don't know there's ads on? Let's take TV. This stat's been around forever, right? Like 50% of people, when a commercial airs, what do?
Look at their phones.
Or go somewhere else.
Yes, it's true. Go get a snack.
So we know this. That's not a new stat. That's what we used to sell at Hulu. Our ads were non-skippable. You didn't have enough time to even do that. You couldn't pause it.
I love that stat, by the way, but I love where you're going here, because I think this kind of really ties into that analogy we were talking about earlier of being the chef of your own marketing efforts, right? Is like, look, every ingredient has a role. All right, it brings a sweetness to the dish, it mellows it out, or brings a savory element to it, right? But I think that we have to look at when we're being presented with a new ingredient, all right, what role does that ingredient have within my mix right now, and will it taste good, or am I leaning way too much salt? Not enough sweet, you know what I mean. I don't know. I'm getting hungry, by the way. I think we're gonna have to go eat something after this.
Done.
But don't you think that's the approach? I mean, the dealerships need to stop looking at sparkly things, all right, and ask themselves, what role does this play in that marketing stew that I'm trying to create, and how can someone tell if the role makes sense for their stew?
It's funny, when I made that measurement post, people were like, you don't like OTT, CTV. It's like, I came from Hulu, man. I love OTT.
I didn't feel like that at all.
Yeah. In fact, I feel like we have one of the best OTT, CTV offerings at Facebook. It's just a little bit, different. So the great question, which is right. Like, so there's a lot of OTT, the buzz now in the market is OTT, CTV. Great.
Yes.
It's non-clickable. Okay. I'm going to buy a package. It's going to cost me 30 grand, 20 grand, 10 grand. Great. Are you replacing TV and radio for that 10 grand? Are you just adding the 10 grand to the mix? Like, how do you know if it's working when you can't click on it?
Yes.
Oh, well, I'm just going to look at the completion rate. Well, they all, have high completion rates.
100%.
So, it could complete it, but does somebody remember the ad, or do they have to like work through the clutter of the 6 ads that were in that commercial break? Like, we just have to get smarter. Listen, Jason, I've been challenging this industry for 5+ years that I bet the average dealer could cut, not spend. And that's not to take away anything from an agency. That's not to take away anything from anybody, but could cut anywhere between 30 and 50% of their advertising and marketing expense and still sell the same amount, if not more, vehicles.
I'm 100% with you on that. And let me where I tell you, I'm going to let you know real quick where I think they should invest it. Here's what I'm seeing. And this is actually more from just my last personal experience. By the way, I just bought a truck. Now, I did not use my contacts in the industry. I forced myself to just because how easy would it be just to put a post out there, say, hey guys, I'm looking for a Nissan Frontier Pro Max. If you got it, let me know. That would have been too easy. No, I said, no, I'm going to be a customer. Right.
Well, hold on. Why did you want a Nissan Pathfinder Pro Max or whatever it was?
Okay, I just like the way it looked.
Okay.
Honestly,
you like the way it looked. How did you start to research what dealer you wanted to go after?
It came down to, I used the ones that I knew I was comfortable with, right? And I've engaged with, and none of them had the truck I was looking for, right? And right now, because inventory being slim, no one's going to dealer trade anything, right? So I engaged with several dealerships that I've never done business with. And I'll tell you, the biggest difference between all the dealerships I engaged, and I engaged with about a dozen, okay, is, some had some really good marketing efforts. Like, I did the whole thing. Like, I literally put myself in market in their area. right? I went to their website. I wanted to see what their remarketing ads were. I wanted to see what their email communications were. I wanted to see their willingness to provide me a buying option, not a sales process, a buying process, not a sales process. By the way, only like 3 were willing to provide me a buying process instead of a sales process. Like they had to have me show up at the dealership. They had to have me go through these 6 steps to do it. So 12 went down quickly to 3, right? And then out of those 3, the communication was the key, right? So we're talking about all this marketing information, all the marketing strategies, marketing mix, the role of the ad format, and the intent is to get them to engage. And then that's where we fall off. We fall flat on our freaking faces. 12 dealerships that I have had no experience in, so that my name would have never been in their database, and my name's in a lot of dealerships databases because I drive 5,000 to 8,000 kilometers a month and get an oil change every single month. But I wasn't in those databases, and their level of communications blew my mind. It just blew my mind, and that's where we're not investing. So we're investing to get an opportunity to have a conversation. We invest a lot of money. To your point, I think for sure we could be cutting 30, 50% and still be selling as many cars. But then we suck. We royally suck at the actual engagement. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this because I just experienced it myself.
So you just brought the sort of the optimization side of understanding what our expenditures are, advertising and marketing wise, what opportunities it's driving, and then how we measure that opportunity. That's the optimization side of the marketing mix, right? Or the media mix. And you nailed it, right? Like you could have the best media plan in the world, exactly, and you could be driving this great opportunity. But if you can't measure it correctly, right? We wouldn't know if it's the best media plan in the world, or if your in-store process is set up incorrectly, then maybe that's the problem. But if we're not looking at all of this together, then we would never know. Like you could say,
and that's why I brought it up.
You could say Facebook doesn't work, man. I'm actually declining. So when in fact, Facebook drove the most opportunity, but the process behind it actually failed.
Yes.
And I think this is where our conversation before we went live of the evolution of this industry, this is where you're going to see, I think, those who adopt and move up and those who struggle and potentially fail is understanding how this entire ecosystem works as a whole. I mean, you've heard our good buddy Brian Kramer talk about data.
Yep.
Right. Data. Like, look at the data. What does the data tell us? And I said to him at one point, what if the data's wrong?
Yeah.
How do you know the data's set up correctly? He's like, great point. I'm like, and I wasn't even talking about advertising and marketing. I was just talking about it holistically. So, and we all agree. This is why we need standardization for at least the digital measurement side of the house. And then this is why we need to start creating marketing mixes so we can see how the two work hand in hand, and then we can focus on the process.
100%. Hey, Bob, I know we're towards the tail end of our conversation today. We've covered some seriously cool topics. I know there's still a lot of meat on these bones of conversation that we brought up today. So for everyone out there that's watching and listening right now and maybe would love to connect with you or even just kind of follow along with your journey, what's the best way to do so?
Yeah, and I hope this doesn't come across the wrong way, but the best way to follow me is on LinkedIn. I do try to use it to not only put out what's happening with Meta, but challenge the industry, be challenged myself. I mean, I get a lot of comments and feedback of different ways of thinking that I might not have thought of. And that's what I love about our industry, man. Most of people aren't afraid to tell how they feel. And I'm a student of the game. It's the best way I learn. But, it's funny, a lot of the feedback and even some of the things I say is opinion, feeling. Tim Cox, our good buddy, always says, well, we should have facts over feelings. Amen. Well, 100%. We can only have facts if we have data set up correctly, right? Or media mixes set up correctly so we can start comparing. So follow me on LinkedIn. That's the best way to go about it. And, just engage, man. Let's make let's make the industry better.
Bob, thank you so much for taking the time to jam with me today. This has been a lot of fun. You have yourself an amazing day.
Thanks for tuning in to the Strategy with Jason podcast with your host, Jason Harris. Don't want to miss new content? Be sure to check out the full podcast library at strategywithjason.com to stay in the know. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Happy podcasting.